European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who is seeking support for a second term as president, has endorsed a Greek and Polish proposal for a European air and missile defence system that would operate outside of NATO and provide a comprehensive air defence system to protect our common EU airspace against all incoming threats. This is not a new idea, as Germany has been pursuing a similar idea with the support of 21 European countries, and there is also a French and Italian initiative for a European air and missile defence system that is a rival to the German plan. Josep Borrell, the top European diplomat, endorsed the Greek and Polish proposals. However, he acknowledged that the devil is in the details of the European air defence proposal, which is crucial, raising questions that go beyond missile defence. The German government, under Chancellor Olaf Scholz, proposed a European air and missile defence system in 2022 after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The European Sky Shield Initiative, ESSI, a German programme, aims to establish a layered defence system by utilising the German IRIS-T, American Patriot and American-Israeli Arrow 3 defence systems. The programme aimed to not only bridge the gap in air and missile defence in Europe, but also stimulate defence spending in the region, spearheaded by a country that had long neglected and underfunded its defences. We anticipate that the programme will encourage the adoption of common procurement and air defence operations. The German initiative has received support from 21 European countries. The German initiative has received criticism from France, which is working with Italy to create a European air defence system, similar to the US Patriot system called SAMP-T. When identifying an air defence system for ESSI, the Germans considered the SAMP-T, but they chose the German, Israeli and American systems. This decision led to increased tension between French President Macron and his ongoing dispute with Europe and its allies over the preference for American defence systems over European, primarily French-built weapons. The SAMP-T is an advanced weapon system that is newer than the ESSI systems, so it has some capability improvements. The problem is that SAMP-T is not operational, whereas ESSI's components are all operational and have proven capability. NATO forces throughout Europe also use the Patriot, indicating that interoperability between NATO and ESSI is not a problem. The French's main criticism is that ESSI relies on defence industries outside of Europe, and this is an issue that President Macron is championing as he tries to reduce the United States' influence on European defence. According to President Macron, the Ukraine war and Russia's apparent shift to a wartime economy have shown the necessity of rebuilding Europe's long-neglected defence industry. He believes that European NATO defence spending should prioritise Europe, as buying weapons from outside Europe prevents Europeans from being self-sufficient in their defence. Just as Chancellor Scholz argues that a European originating system like ESI will promote additional defence spending, President Macron substantially argues the same thing, but that the euros earmarked for defence stay in Europe, and programmes like ESSI, by not being European-based, degrade European sovereignty and continued dependence on the United States. German Chancellor Scholz has said little about the French and Italian push to create their own ESSI, except that he supports it if it does not conflict with the German initiative. Outside of the French obsession with eroding US influence in Europe, party politics play a role. President von der Leyen, Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis, and Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk share a similar centre-right political alignment, with Chancellor Scholz's SPD party serving as the rival party to President von der Leyen's CDU. Also, Prime Ministers Mitsotakis and Tusk, to a greater extent, have been relatively cool toward Berlin and its leadership during the war, and though not signing on to the French initiative, have not committed to the German initiative either. In her second term, President von der Leyen has agreed to commission an air defence white paper and provide its findings within the first 100 days of its commission. The President's goal is to have the European Commission play a greater role in Europe's defence. The European Union is not part of NATO, so any European air defence system would be outside of NATO and its command structure. It would also mean that the EU would be making decisions on defence and defence procurement, which have typically been under the authority of the member states. If the EU decides how to proceed, it would increase the EU's centralised power at the expense of the member countries. The assumption is that the European Union would need to fund this initiative, but there is a risk that this defence spending could hinder EU states' ability to fulfil their NATO 2% GDP obligation. We assume that EU members will also contribute to the development of this missile defence system, thereby shifting limited funds from NATO to the non-NATO European Union. Since the EU lacks a military structure, the operation of such a defence system, from command and control to individual armed force members or non-military government workers, remains unclear. The other issue is, will the EU maintain NATO interoperability, or will it eventually choose its own standards? Most likely it would strive to uphold NATO standards, albeit with no guarantee. The other issue is that while the German-led ESSI proposal aims to protect European airspace, it is not a project of the European Union. Despite not being an EU proposal, President Macron's desire to shape the EU under French leadership suggests that the French-Italian proposal ultimately aims to function as an EU instrument. The Greek-Polish proposal presented to President van der Leyen is an EU proposal that necessitates unanimous support from all member countries to establish this system. Given that this is a new arena for the EU, it is likely that numerous unanimous votes will be required to create the new regulations necessary for the funding, creation and operation of this system. It is unlikely that this will happen. The questions presented by the various air defence initiatives as well as the Ukraine war itself have identified a gap in European defences. It has exposed the Europeans and to a lesser extent the United States to a harsh reality in the area of defence industry neglect. The United States maintained a robust defence industry, but not one strong enough to be the arsenal of democracy for advanced weapon systems. The Europeans, particularly Germany, have allowed their defence industrial base and supply chains to deteriorate to such an extent that in the third year of the Ukraine war they are still unable to produce enough weapons to supply Ukraine, let alone replenish their own stock. The other question revolves around the EU's intentions and whether it will use this opportunity as a catalyst to establish a European army under its banner. Considering the German position on ESSI, its rivalry with France and the unresolved questions about the EU's ability to field an armed force in something as complex as air and missile defence, it is likely that all of these initiatives will fall short of expectations, and a united Europe will remain fragmented.